A monster wildfire in Western Canada threatens to double in size. Families who have had to evacuate their homes are forced to move again. Also tonight, voters in London make history, electing a Muslim mayor.
I never dreamt that I could be standing here.
You look at Hillary Clinton, you look at the people that are putting up the money, folks.
Donald Trump sharpens his attacks on Hillary Clinton while trying to make peace with his own party. And at Howard University's graduation, President Obama weighs in on poverty and race.
Be confident in your heritage. Be confident in your blackness.
This is the CBS Weekend News.
Welcome to the CBS Weekend News. I'm Vladimir Dutier. A tremendous wildfire in Alberta, Canada now covers more than 385,000 acres. It is expected to grow substantially, perhaps double in size by Sunday morning. Nearly 90,000 people have been evacuated from the city of Fort McMurray. Thousands who fled north are now being moved south as firefighters try to knock down giant walls of flames. Ben Tracy is in Alberta.
There are times when you can't tell if it's a fire or a volcano that just erupted. Giant stacks of smoke and flames reach for the sky, tearing through the drought-ravaged Canadian forest. Alberta wildfire manager Chad Morrison.
We still expect this fire to more than double in size because of the high temperatures, strong winds, the low humidities. The good news is it still continues to move away from the community and oil sands facilities to the northeast.
With no significant rain in the forecast, this fire is nearly impossible to contain. Fire Captain Adam Bugden has been on the front lines.
Met more heroes in this experience than I've ever thought existed.
The winds are now blowing the fire away from some of the towns that were in its path. That could save what is left of Fort McMurray. Much of it looks like a bomb went off. Police say they discovered a family of 5 who had not evacuated and were thankfully not injured. One homeowner who monitors his security cameras on his iPhone watched as flames devoured everything in his living room in less than 2 minutes.
The town itself is a ghost town.
Brian Jean represents Fort McMurray in the Canadian Assembly. His house was burned to the ground earlier this week, and he says residents will not be returning home anytime soon.
Services such as water, gas, and electricity. In some parts of town it doesn't exist. In other parts the pipes have collapsed. So we'll take some crews some period of time to get things under control.
Tens of thousands of people who fled Fort McMurray when fire ravaged the town are now filling evacuation centers throughout Alberta.
I'm just hoping we're going to have something to go back to.
Sadie Siren came here with her 2 daughters and granddaughter Nora.
What have the last couple of days been like?
It's been good because we're all together, but stressful because there's so many of us there.
Now, more than 2,000 people have already registered here at this evacuation center, and many more are on their way. That's because the 25,000 people that fled north of Fort McMurray are now heading south. The question so many of these people have is when will they be able to go home, and what will they be going home to? Vlad?
Ben Tracy in Alberta. Ben, thanks. The City of London made history today, swearing in its first Muslim mayor. Jonathan Vigliotti is there.
My name is Sadiq Khan, and I'm the Mayor of London.
45-year-old Sadiq Khan was officially sworn in this morning, signing the Declaration of Acceptance before a crowd of supporters. In his acceptance speech late last night, the former human rights lawyer and Labour candidate promised to be a mayor for all Londoners.
And I'm so proud that London has today chosen hope over fear and unity over division.
Khan had to overcome fear campaigns launched by his opponents. Conservative candidate Zach Goldsmith, a billionaire's son, once attacked Khan's former advocacy work for criminal defendants, saying he gave a platform to extremists. Khan has called the claim unfounded and racist.
Please make sure your vote's really important.
In the end, Khan took home 57% of the vote to become the most powerful Muslim in European politics. It's an unlikely path from a humble upbringing. Khan grew up in public housing. His father was a bus driver from Pakistan.
I never dreamt that I could be standing here as the Mayor of London. I'm only here today because of the opportunities and helping hand that our city gave to me and my family.
In his mayoral campaign, he promised to provide more affordable housing and transport. to push for higher wages and to unite the city's diverse communities. Khan's first day on the job is tomorrow. Vlad, he succeeds Boris Johnson, a conservative who's been mayor since 2008.
And Jonathan, what has the reaction in London been so far?
Yeah, overall, there's been a lot of support. In the end, Khan got more than 1.3 million votes. That's more than any other mayoral candidate in London's history.
Jonathan Vigliotti, thank you very much. Well, nearly 8 years after the U.S. made history by electing Barack Obama as the nation's first African-American president, he stressed to new graduates at Howard University that more work needs to be done to improve race relations in the U.S. DeMarco Morgan has more.
As his presidency nears its end, Barack Obama made himself right at home at Howard University.
HU!
Telling the more than 2,000 graduates times have changed.
Let me say something that may be controversial, and that is this. America is a better place today than it was when I graduated from college. I graduated in 1983.
He also dug deep into race relations.
The overall unemployment rate is 5%, but the black unemployment rate is almost 9%. But we've still got a gender gap when a black woman working full-time still earns just 66% of what a white man gets paid. We've got a justice gap. Black men are about 6 times likelier to be in prison right now than white men.
The first African-American president has been forced to walk a fine line on race. Today, he told the graduates to embrace their roots.
Be confident in your heritage. Be confident in your blackness.
The most poignant moment came when the president singled out student Sierra Jefferson for her against long odds journey to graduation day.
Sierra grew up in Detroit and was raised by a poor single mom who worked 7 days a week in an auto plant. And for a time, her family found themselves without a place to call home. And today, like many of you, Sierra's the first in her family to graduate from college. And people like Sierra are why I remain optimistic about America.
Whether his message was about race or the economy, President Obama offered himself up to the class of 2016 as an example of how bright their future can be.
And when your journey seems too hard, and when you run into a chorus of cynics who tell you that you're being foolish to keep believing, you might say to yourself a little phrase that I've found handy these last 8 years. Yes, we can.
DeMarco Morgan, CBS News, New York.
Donald Trump is campaigning in the Pacific Northwest this weekend, targeting Hillary Clinton in every speech in anticipation of a November matchup. He's also facing criticism from members of his own party. Here's Juliana Goldman.
Guess what, folks? I haven't started on Crooked Hillary yet.
With a general election matchup against Hillary Clinton taking shape, Donald Trump's latest attacks are only the beginning.
Nobody in this country, and maybe in the history of the country politically, was worse than Bill Clinton with women. He was a disaster. I mean, have you ever read what Hillary Clinton did to the women that Bill Clinton had affairs with?
But he's not just fighting Democrats, as more Republicans from Jeb Bush to Senator Lindsey Graham say they won't support their party's presumptive nominee. Trump is firing back.
I took these people out, and you know Jeb Bush as an example. This guy, Lindsey Graham, he knows less about the military than my 10-year-old son, Barron.
The billionaire businessman has been more restrained when it comes to Speaker Paul Ryan, who earlier this week said he wasn't ready to support Trump.
I didn't get Paul Ryan. I don't know what happened. I don't know.
Though Trump did have a warning yesterday in Oregon for Republican leaders hoping his meeting next week with Ryan will help unify the party.
If somebody doesn't want to endorse, I don't want their endorsement. The only important thing is the unification of the people, because the other people don't mean anything.
And their presumptive nominee, otherwise called their presumptuous nominee.
Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton's campaign sees the party discord as an opportunity to bring anti-Trump Republicans into her camp.
This election is a make or break election in so many ways.
Former Vice President Dick Cheney is among some of the establishment Republicans supporting Trump. And Vlad, while many top donors are sitting out, one of the biggest, billionaire Sheldon Adelson, is also backing him.
Juliana Goldman, thanks. John Dickerson is interviewing Hillary Clinton for Face the Nation. You can see that tomorrow morning on CBS. Protests at San Francisco's City Hall quickly escalated into violence late last night. More than 30 people were arrested. Demonstrators are calling for the police chief's resignation over alleged police brutality. Carter Evans is in Los Angeles with the latest.
The protest outside a San Francisco police station had been going on for 16 days, but last night demonstrators moved to City Hall and they refused to leave. They were met by authorities as they tried to go to the mayor's office, demanding the firing of San Francisco Police Chief Greg Suhr. They're protesting recent police shooting deaths and the discovery that some police officers had been exchanging racist and homophobic text messages. Earlier Friday afternoon, 5 protesters who've been on a hunger strike for more than 2 weeks were taken to the hospital after receiving a phone call from the mayor telling them he would not meet their demands. At least one of those protesters told reporters he had already lost 15 pounds. Now, supporters say those 5 protesters are vowing to continue their hunger strike in the hospital, even if they have to refuse feeding tubes. Vlad?
Carter Evans, thank you. Notorious drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman has a new home. He was taken by airplane to a facility in Ciudad Juarez near the U.S. border. Guzman had twice escaped prison and was recaptured in January. He is currently facing extradition to the United States on a wide range of charges. Some rough weather is hitting the western half of the country today. Severe thunderstorms are expected across the central and southern plains. Parts of Kansas and Oklahoma are at risk for tornadoes. Friday, California was in the crosshairs. Parts of the desert city of Ontario were flooded. No one was hurt. Despite that rain, a new drought report says 90% of California is still experiencing moderate to exceptional drought. But for the first time in more than 3 years, a small portion of the state, just 10%, is now drought-free. North Carolina legislators are facing a federal deadline regarding the state's controversial bathroom bill. The U.S. Department of Justice says the law violates the civil rights of transgender people, and they're asking state leaders to do something about it by Monday. Marley Hall is following this.
Vlad, it's a controversial issue that has sparked protests, lawsuits, and most recently, federal disapproval. The Department of Justice says forcing transgender people to use public restrooms that correspond with their birth sex violates the Civil Rights Act. North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory addressed other Republicans at the state's convention today and supported the measure.
Common sense privacy laws in our restrooms, our locker rooms, and our shower facilities in government buildings, in our universities, in our schools.
North Carolina is at risk of losing billions in federal funding if local leaders don't respond by Monday. Other GOP leaders in the state have said the deadline is unreasonable and won't be met. Vlad, North Carolina has already taken an economic hit since the bathroom bill was enacted last March.
Marley Hall here in New York for us. Thanks, Marley. Coming up, more than 70 years after World War II, Holocaust survivors face a deadline to apply for reparations. This was a week of remembrance for the 6 million Jews murdered in the Holocaust, thousands of whom were transported to Nazi death camps aboard French trains. Now, for the first time, the State Department, in conjunction with France, will dole out $60 million in reparations to survivors who apply by the end of this month. Margaret Brennan spoke to one survivor.
This was outright murder, genocide.
96-year-old Kurt Rosendahl was just 22 when French police forced him onto a train to the Auschwitz concentration camp. The ID number tattooed by the Nazis is still visible on his arm.
They were cattle cars.
Cattle cars?
Cattle cars.
Like
no
for
food,
animals?
No food, no sanitary facilities, no way to wash.
How many people do you think were in that car with you?
Between 75 and 100.
The cars were supposed to carry just 40 people. A replica sits in what was once the Drancy internment camp outside Paris. Most of the 76,000 Jews that France deported passed through here on their way to Nazi death camps like Auschwitz. All but 2,000 were killed. France's state-owned rail company made a profit on each person it transported, including 6,000 children. 71 years after the war, at the urging of the U.S. government, the French have created a $60 million compensation fund for survivors and victims' families. In exchange, France will be protected from any related U.S. lawsuit.
It was very complex.
Ambassador Stuart Eisenstadt negotiated the agreement.
when you come right down to it, it's always money. They wanted to offer less, we wanted more, and coming to a conclusion was difficult.
You look happy.
I was happy.
For Kurt Rosendahl, who just recently lost his wife of nearly 70 years, the expected $100,000 payment is a little late.
We have a lot of expenses, so we feel it's necessary and overdue.
It may not be an apology, but in the twilight of Kurt Rosendahl's extraordinary life, it's some recognition from the country that betrayed him. Margaret Brennan, CBS News, Boca Raton, Florida.
The Powerball jackpot is growing by the minute, creeping toward $500 million. The odds of winning are about 300 million to 1, but if you're feeling lucky, you still have time to buy tickets. The numbers will be drawn at 10:59 Eastern. And last night in Los Angeles, the forecast called for rain. Purple Rain. The legendary Stevie Wonder, just one of many artists who turned out for a free Prince tribute concert outside LA City Hall. Thousands turned out to celebrate the Purple One, many of them wearing purple. Prince died last month at the age of 57. When the Weekend News returns, we'll take you to Brussels, where a survivor of the terror attacks is finally reunited with his daughters. Finally tonight, an emotional family reunion. We've been following the story of Sébastien Bellin, a former pro basketball player who lives in Michigan. He was badly injured in the Brussels terror attacks back in March. More than 5 weeks later, he finally got to hug his girls.
You're about to die, and you're like, no. And
when we first met Sébastien Bellin 2 days after the attacks, he told us it was his 2 daughters that gave him the strength to survive.
I'm thinking, I gotta make it. I gotta see my daughters again. I gotta see my girls.
Where are you going now?
To the hospital.
41 days later, he finally got his wish.
Okay. What do you? What's up?
Bellin, his wife Sarah, and their 2 kids were together again.
I didn't want them to grow up without a dad. You know, everything worked out. Everything worked out for the best. You know, I'm keeping my legs. I'm alive, and my 2 little girls just walked into the room. So everything's gonna be all right. Girls, come here. I haven't had enough hugs.
7-year-old Cecilia and 4-year-old Vanessa quickly made themselves at home.
Glued to you. I'm getting glued to you.
Climbing on their dad and coloring his cast.
Done.
They had Skyped with their father from their home in Michigan. But Sunday marked the first time the girls saw him in person.
I think kids need to touch, to see the actual cast, to touch it. You know, they see that their dad is getting better.
In the month since the bombs left Bellin broken and bleeding on the airport floor, he's undergone 5 surgeries, and his recovery is progressing well. But reflecting on what happened is still difficult.
Life is just, you know, it's on threads. It's you need a lot of luck in these situations.
Luck, and his family by his side.
When you get out of something like this alive, you feel pretty confident. You feel pretty confident that you can overcome anything. Because if you can beat this, you can beat anything.
Seb told me after the attacks, all he thought about was his daughters growing up without a father. He survived, and it's so great to see him with the girls. That is the CBS Weekend News for this Saturday. The news continues now on our 24-hour digital network, CBSN, at cbsnews.com. More later on your local late-night news and tomorrow on CBS Sunday Morning. I'm Vladimir Duthier in New York. For all of us at CBS News, thanks for joining us, and good night.